You're listening to 204 Hoops Talk. I'm your host, Blaine Stenson.
And I'm your host, Arjun Narula. Thanks for joining us today on episode number 1.
Okay, so I think the most appropriate place for us to start off our first episode was yesterday was the 5th year anniversary of the late, great Kobe Bryant's passing. Obviously, his daughter Gianna and the others that died in that horrific helicopter crash 5 years ago. Obviously, it was a sad day, but I don't think we want to start off necessarily on a sad note. So we grew up watching and talking basketball together, and we were both big Kobe fans. What was some of your favorite Kobe moments?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Kobe was a big part of, us growing up. Being a Raptor fan, can't forget about the 81 points that he dropped on my favorite team. I have a tattoo to honor him and Gianna as well. Some of my other favorite moments were definitely, how involved Kobe was in the women's game. So, him training Candace Parker kind of, later in her career, her using those moves, winning a couple championships. Him working with Sabrina Ionescu when she was in university, and how that translated into her game of the WNBA. She just won a championship last year with the Liberty, and she's now training Kobe's youngest daughter, who, they're hoping kind of follows in the footsteps of her sister and her dad. And when I look at the NBA, I think, Kobe and Jordan going back and forth. So in that 2003 All-Star game, and then that moment where, Jordan told Kobe, you can wear the shoes, but you'll never fill them. Kobe basically went silent mode on his teammates and then dropped 55 on Jordan. So
sent him into retirement with a 55 piece. I always like that story. I think for me, I think my favorite moment, obviously there was the 81 point game, which was iconic and stuff, but his last game that he played against Utah when he scored 60, I think it was completely unexpected. And it was nice to see a throwback Kobe performance.
Yeah, and Shaq challenged him to get, I think, 50. So he had to one up what Shaq said.
Yeah,
so
how did Shaq put it after? He says I challenged him to get 50, and the motherfucker got 60.
Yep.
Stuff which pretty much summed up his career. But I liked how Kobe kind of brushed it off when he was first asked on TNT. But from what I understand is before the game when Shaq asked him to do that, he said, "Okay, I'll give it a shot," kind of thing. So I think he always had that in his mind that he was going to do that. But I just remember how that game started out, and he came out and he was just shooting the ball atrociously. I mean, he took 50 shots in the game, so it was not the most efficient 60-point game. But I mean, that's the most classic Kobe game I think ever, because he was always criticized for being a bit of a chucker at times, which he certainly was. But he was also, in my opinion, the greatest tough shot maker of all time.
Definitely.
Outside of maybe Michael Jordan, but I mean, the defense in the 90s, it didn't really allow for some of the... You would see double teams, obviously, but with the illegal defense rules and not being able to play zone and all that stuff, I mean, you didn't really see Jordan taking fadeaway threes over 3 defenders.
No, you're not going to have like that Ruben Patterson moment where he's at the top of the key and he turns this way and turns that way and then he shoots a 3.
Yeah, that was against Portland, wasn't it? Yeah, or the catch and shoot where he had to let it go with. I think there was less than a second on the clock and he hit the rainbow right over him and all that stuff. So I mean, I think there's so many great moments from Kobe. I think it's hard to kind of narrow it down. Obviously, there's the 5 championships. The one thing I will say is he should have won more than one MVP. As much as being Canadian, as much as I love Steve Nash did not deserve that 2005-2006 MVP. I know some Canadians are going to be pissed off with me with that. I said that to my grandpa one time, who was not the biggest basketball fan in the world, but he would always advocate for Canadian athletes over everybody. Yeah. And he said, I don't think that's very fair, he would say. And
Shaq says the same thing, right? He's like, show me that MVP that you stole from me in your house.
Fairness as a, the thing with that one, though, was that was in the 04-05 season, the season before. And Shaq was playing for my Heat that year. And, I mean, Shaq was definitely one of the better players in the league, but he was not the same Shaq anymore. I don't think he won MVP, and you can make a real I think you can make a fairly real case that Dwayne Wade was already the best player on that team. So
Yep.
I have a hard time with somebody claiming to be MVP when they may not have even been the best player on their team anymore. As for the next year, though, I mean, you look at the starting lineup he had, right? He had Smush Parker.
Yeah.
He had Chris Mem. He had Devin George. And then he had Kwame Brown, who...
We'll get into him on another episode.
Yeah, we'll get into that another day, but that team speaks for itself. That team had no business even getting near the playoffs, and the guy averaged like 35, almost 36 points a game.
Yep.
5 and 5 or 6 and 6, whatever his other statistics were. And I mean, he had that season too. He also had the 62 points in 3 quarters against Dallas,
the Mavs, yep.
where he outscored the Mavs through 3 quarters and didn't play in the
fourth,
in the last quarter. I don't know. I think there's so many great memories, but he's one of my favorite players. I think in retrospect, there was times that I didn't cheer for him, where looking back now, if I knew what I knew now, he probably honestly would have been my favorite player, even over Dwayne Wade. I find I watch more Kobe stuff now than D Wade stuff, even though D Wade is my favorite player. He's just the guy was just so good. I mean, I think he's the most skilled player of all time in terms of just fundamentals, and I think he's also the most underrated player of all time, or one of, despite being as good as he was and as revered as he was.
Yeah, and I think we didn't know a whole lot about him early on. Like, in reading DeMar DeRozan's book, just the influence he had, how, somebody growing up in Compton is just trying to make it out, and, he's texting him, he's, kind of taking him under his wing, he's giving him shoes. Like, he really just wanted to grow the game, and if he knew that somebody kind of had that drive and that passion, just like Jordan kind of taught him, he was willing to pass it down if he knew the person was kind of in that right frame of mind.
Yeah, and that was as long as you had that work ethic, because there's the famous video where he's at practice and he's basically like yelling at his teammates, you motherfuckers are softer than Charmin, and saying all this, and he's yelling at Mitch Kupchak, who I believe was in the gym, like, Mitch, how am I supposed to get better with these motherfuckers on the court? And like, he was pissed. He didn't tolerate the
mediocre.
He didn't tolerate mediocrity, and he did not appreciate a lack of effort. He didn't necessarily care if you weren't the best player. I mean, look at Steve Blake, who played with him. Steve Blake was not the best player in the world,
but he worked his tail off,
and he was a dog, right? And Kobe loved him for that. So as long as you put in the effort, I don't think he that's when he had your respect. You didn't have to be Michael Jordan, certainly, kind of thing, but. I mean, it's just too bad what happened. I think it would have been really good to see what where he would have helped boost the women's game. I do think the women's game, and you obviously know more about this than me. I don't really follow the women's game particularly close and stuff, but I think from my perspective, I do think the women's game would be a little further along if he had stayed, because he was a big advocate. Like, I remember right before he died, he had done an interview where he had said that he believed that there were WNBA players that could play in the NBA now, and he caught a lot of ridicule for that, and I admit, I personally disagree with him. I think pretty much all of them would have gotten overwhelmed with the physicality and all that stuff. Skill-wise, I think, someone like Diana Taurasi, yes, she is more skilled than a lot of guys in the NBA, but she's just not physically strong enough, so I don't think it would have computed, but I think that was just his way of kind of trying to boost the women's game and just create a narrative, because Kobe knew how to do that.
Yep. Definitely.
Kind of thing, but I think it really suffered, but it's just too bad what happened, and obviously, with his daughter being there and all that, it was just a terrible situation. I mean, I remember the day that it happened, and my sister texted me, and you see everybody on all the players on TV, everybody was crying, and I know I shed a few tears that day. I'm assuming you probably did too. So it's just too bad, but. I think this time of year is a good time to reflect on him and stuff. Like, I mean, even CNN's got that new docuseries that just came out
on the 25th.
Yeah, the first episode just came out, and I had started watching it last night, and admittedly I fell asleep on the couch, so I didn't actually get to finish watching it and stuff. But that is something I plan on doing this week, because I can never get enough of Kobe personally.
No, for sure. I just watched something recently about Kyle Kuzma, even, being interviewed by a young kid asking if he had any Kobe stories. And he said, yep, he worked me out and he made me do 100 reps of everything. And I was worried that he was going to tell management I wasn't in shape, but he told them I was in great shape. And he just wanted, that was the test, right? That was the Kobe test. Are you going to go through this? Are you going to crawl, cry and complain? Or are you just going to tough it out and do it, and whatever happens, happens? So like you said, if he gained your respect, you'd give you all the things in his toolkit. But I mean, I think, we've paid Kobe his homage. I think, let's look at some of the stuff that's going on currently. And the thing that just kind of broke, I think, a couple hours ago was Jimmy Butler, who's on your Heat. So let's talk through him being suspended indefinitely and just what your thoughts are on that.
Oh my God. I find it really unfortunate that this is what it's come to. I can't say I'm surprised. I shouldn't say I can't say I'm surprised, because I thought it was going to be different with us, because for years he had expressed that he wanted to come to Miami.
Yep.
Right? And he's always portrayed himself as being a dog, basically, and being hard-nosed and, all this different stuff. And from what I've gathered and stuff with all the Heat stuff that I watch and listen to and read about and stuff, it all kind of started after the playoffs last year, when he was criticized by Pat Riley. He'd said in his press conference, something to the effect of, we would have won if I had been playing. We would have beaten Boston. We would have beaten New York, blah, blah, blah. And Pat Riley basically came out and said, like, shut the hell up in his press conference. So I think that ticked him off. But the fact that is what kind of started it, I think, is a little bit... I don't mean to come off as an angry fan, I guess, on our first episode and stuff, but like it's like what Kobe said in the in that clip I was referring to, like, you motherfuckers are softer than Charmin. Really, Jimmy? Really? You're getting paid for this year $48 million, almost $49 million to play a game.
Yeah.
And you're upset at 35 years old now that you didn't get the extension that you asked for when you wanted max money? I mean, yeah, okay, I get it. You've taken us to 2 finals. Okay? You've been the leader of our team for the last however many years. But Tyler Hero's coming into his own. He's having a career season. You've got Bam. You've got Pele Larson. You've got this Kalel Ware. This kid is something, and we'll get into him, at another time and stuff. But there's a decent collection of talent on this team, and for you to just all of a sudden blow it up in everybody's face because you're not getting your way, and then at the same time you complain that they didn't do enough to put enough help around you. Well, maybe if you took a little bit of a discount and said, hey, I'll take, I understand I'm 35, I'll take 30 million, I'll take 35 million, instead of wanting 50, you got another $15 million to play with to bring in some of those pieces, or potentially package some guys in a trade and get another star.
And that's exactly what Wade and them did, in that Big Three era. Everybody had to make sacrifices, right? I think the thing with Jimmy is like, you only have so many cards to play when you're like, it's not working out. Minnesota, he had the same thing, happened in Philly. I understand some of those places are not, a winning culture. I don't think I can say that about Miami, especially how they're run and all that. So I think he's kind of, it's sometimes, is it the person that's the problem, or is it something else? I think he's the common denominator now. And like you said, everybody's got to make some sacrifices. Right now, it just seems like if it's not his way, he wants out. And Pat Riley's kind of got a similar, approach, right? Like, so I think it's just they've kind of come to ends. And I don't know if you have any potential, destinations where you see it working out, but I don't think he's going to play another game with the Heat. I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, I mean, with today and just a couple hours ago, he was suspended indefinitely by the team. This is after he served a 7-game suspension, and then he was suspended last weekend for the previous 2 games on the road trip against Milwaukee and then against Brooklyn.
Yeah, so he missed that flight
because he wanted to travel separately of the team. So I think at this point, I think the Heat, I think they're fed up with him, so they're using basically anything they can to look for an excuse to keep him away from the team. And, Miami doesn't operate like other teams and stuff. Like, they're not just going to send him home with pay. They're not going to do that. They're going to look for a reason to suspend him. The Players Association has said they're going to file a grievance, which I get it. They're a union, and unions are, in any walk of life, unions are just a headache to deal with. They're necessary because they protect workers and stuff. But I mean, in a situation like this, you're getting paid to play basketball. You signed a contract that you were going to be there to play. You still have one more year on your contract after this. It's not like this is an expiring deal and you're worried about where your next one is. If you're so worried, you opt in next year and you're getting 50, I think it's 52 million next season.
Yeah.
Right? So for him to just decide not to play, I think it's a really bad look. I've heard some people blaming the Heat for it and putting some blame on the Heat, and I don't really see where there's blame to be had. Really, the only thing I think that they have done wrong is maybe Pat Riley should have kept it in-house more.
Yep.
About, the shut the hell up about that. He probably could have said to Jimmy, like, hey, come on, like, don't do that in press conferences anymore. That's not a good look, and blah, blah, blah. But in terms of, back to your question, I kind of went on a little bit of a rant there. In terms of destination, I mean, he said he wants to go to Phoenix. And
so did his shoes.
Yeah, and his hair too.
Yeah.
In terms of that, I'm looking at this from the Heat's perspective and from a fan's perspective, and just the way he's acted and really kind of caused chaos in our team. I don't really give a damn where you want to go. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned and stuff like that, I think I can't think of anybody like I can think of some players I would like to get back, but it's not realistic, right? Like, you trade in Milwaukee, you can get Giannis. Sure, I'll take Giannis, but that's not going to happen,
yeah.
Right? So the one they've talked about most is Bradley Beal on Phoenix. But, I mean, Bradley Beal can't stay healthy to save his life. So why would we want Bradley Beal on our team, especially when he still has a no-trade clause, which I'm pretty sure, I will have to look into this, but I'm pretty sure that even if you
opt out,
basically forego or waive your no trade clause and stuff, it's still in effect when you get to your new team. It's just kind of a like, yes, I will accept it and stuff, but I don't think it just goes away. So if we could get him and the no trade clause is gone and it's just to get rid of him, okay, but to pay him all that money with I think he's got 2 or 3 years left on his contract for sure. Yeah. To pay him all that money and he can't stay on the floor, that's not worth it for us. So in terms of destination, like, I can't really think of anybody else that's going to want to do it. So unless we can trade him to, like, the worst possible team ever, like send him to Washington.
For Kuzma or Poole or something.
Or somebody that's, not even them, like, just, like, expiring contracts. Like, I don't even care if you give us, like, the 3 worst guys off the bench if the money works kind of thing. But their contracts are expiring at the end of the year. Like, yeah. I think the best thing is, and I haven't looked at who the free agents are in 2026, but I know that that's kind of the next good free agent class is in 2026. So I think the Heat are going to kind of start trying to align themselves with that. And obviously, if they can pull the trigger on a big trade before then to get a star, they will do it sooner because they're always in win now mode, even if they're, in the process of rebuilding. The thought is, okay, we're trying to do this as quickly as possible. It's not like a...
So then are they entering a rebuild? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, if he's kind of like, where do you kind of see them? Like,
well, I think we're kind of already in that. I think we're kind of already in that space because we're not a championship contender without Jimmy Butler. That's just the reality. I'm not going to sit here and say I hate Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's still probably my favorite player. No, I think that's unfortunate. I'm not going to go and burn my jersey like I did with LeBron back then. And that was even, me doing that with LeBron, I was more just, I hurt that the best player in the league is deciding to leave, and I didn't like the way he did it, and he kind of screwed my guy D Wade out of $10 million or whatever it is. So I just didn't. And before that, there was always the Kobe versus LeBron and the D Wade versus LeBron rivalry. So I was never a big LeBron fan before he came. Yep. But that's getting a little bit away from the from it. But yeah, I think we're already in that rebuild, and I think it's time to just pull the plug. So I think the best thing, honestly, for them is if they can find a way to suspend him without pay for the rest of the season, if they cannot find a trade where we get expiring contracts and maybe a draft pick or two, I think the best thing to do is just let him, put the ball in his court, and if he wants to opt out of his contract at the end of the summer and we can free up $52 million of cap space, I think that's the best thing because... Yep. Then you've got, again, $52 million to play with, and you can sign some one-year guys and then kind of realign the books for,
26, yeah.
2026, because I'm assuming Duncan Robinson's big contract, that's got to be soon over because he signed that a few years ago. Tyler Hero's on a fairly large contract, Bam is and stuff, but those are the two guys you're going to want to keep.
Yeah,
right. But everybody else, I mean, Jaime Jaquez, he hasn't turned into anything. Like he's a good player. I think he's better than I think some people expected, but he's not. He's nothing special. So he's not going to command the big contract and stuff. So I think the next guy that potentially could, and this is a few years down the road, is Ware after the few games he's had. But yeah, I think the best thing for us is just honestly like get him off the team as quickly as possible, whether that's through trade or suspend him for the year and then let him walk. And if he wants to opt into his contract next year, you better be ready to play and not pull this bullshit, because this is like honestly enough is enough.
No, I totally hear you. Speaking about the clock kind of ticking down, the NBA Paris games that happened between Indiana and San Antonio, they featured the new Tissot shot clock. I think they're missing the ball here, Blaine. Like ratings.
Did they have the new shot clock?
They had the new shot clock,
circular one.
That's the one. Yeah. So. They had a lot of, people there. It's Paris Fashion Week. I get they want to hop off that and the culture and, get some big names out. But they're just kind of missing the ball. I mean, ratings are down. We can chalk it up to a couple things. You and I have kind of talked about, between our phone calls and just, texting, this new style of play. So, we'll start off with the lack of defense. I've seen games where there's 6 minutes left in the third and a team has 100 points. Like, it's insane. So I don't know if you want to chime in on what kind of you're seeing with the style of play with lack of defense and, the 3-point kind of barrage, but.
Well, I mean, obviously, me, I'm very much a traditionalist and stuff like that. So I've definitely expressed my, in our conversations and conversations I've had with other friends and, people that ask me questions about the NBA that maybe don't know it as well and stuff. I've been very critical of the style of play. As for just very quickly on the shot clock and stuff, I just think it's funny. So they want to change it from a square to a circle.
Yeah.
And they're focusing on everything except for the goddamn refereeing. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's just, from the, very quickly before I get into style of play, I mean, the officiating is just, I actually, I think the officiating kind of goes into the style of play and like Definitely. Some of the lack of defense, because there's such an emphasis on officiating for the offensive player that guys don't want to engage in defense anymore.
And that takes me back to when you look at how teams are guarding Harden, when they're literally standing beside him or behind him with their hands up, because everything is a rip through, a step through. Like you can't. Like, the guy's a bubble around him. I don't know how the hell you're supposed to guard him.
Well, exactly. And I remember, I remember when we were kids, and, it was always one of my favorite moves, and I always got people with it, and I want to emphasize, we played, Division II basketball. We're certainly not, top-notch talent or anything like that, far from it and stuff like that. But if I would be on the wing, and, I did this to you a lot of times, too, where you'd kind of get a hand on me, and I would rip through, and I'd go into a shot to get a foul call and stuff. That's fine. You had a hand out. You were reaching. You had your hand on me kind of thing. But, I mean, these ones were, they're literally not touching. They're backing up with their hands up. And they're getting called for a foul. I think a little bit has to be given, some benefit has to be given to the defensive player, because defense is half the game.
Yep.
Like they say, defense wins championships. And right now, I mean, it really hasn't been the best defense in the league that's won championships. Boston with maybe, I mean, they've got one of the better defenses and they won last year. Yeah. Milwaukee's was all right. But I mean, the Warriors, when they won a couple of years ago, they had a good defense, but it wasn't one of the best. It wasn't one of the best in the league. The Lakers, I think their defense was better than some, but I mean, my opinions on the bubble season. I think a lot of that was, LeBron was fresh because of the layoff and all that. I mean, championship's a championship. I'm not going to say it's a Mickey Mouse ring or any of that nonsense. I might if I'm just trying to hate on LeBron because I'm pissed off still that he left the Heat. But so at some point I need to get over it. But I think the big thing, the thing I hear the most with style of play is like you said, with the scoring, the lack of defense, is also how 3-point heavy it is.
Yeah. I wish I played in the NBA when it was like this, or it was like this when we played, because that's all I did. But I mean,
well, I remember yelling at you a few times. Stop shooting fucking threes.
yeah, but it's also like we've talked about. It's how is the 3-point shot being shot and who's shooting it. There's a good three and there's a bad three, and we're seeing a lot of bad threes right now.
Well, that's just it. I was watching a game sometime in the last 2 weeks, and I don't even remember. I watched so many games, I don't even remember who it was. But I want to say there was 2.5 or 3 minutes of game time where there was not one layup attempted. There was not one attempt to get to the line. There was
Nothing
no stoppage.
in the mid-range.
There was no stoppage in play, and it was literally run down, chuck up a three, run down, chuck up a three, run back down the other way, pass, three.
Yeah.
Another one was a little penetration, pitch out, three. And more than half of them missed. It's not like they were just like both teams were on fire and in a groove. Because, I mean, it wasn't unusual to see when we were kids even to see multiple threes in successive possessions and stuff, but that only happened when teams were like they were shooting the lights out and stuff like that. So, yeah. But like you said about bad threes, like this whole, seeing guys like, they're coming down on a 2-on-1 break.
Yeah.
Right? And you've got a defender pedaling and someone on the, running the lane and stuff like that, and then you're popping a three.
Yeah.
Because it's wide open. Like that's a bad shot. I don't care who you are. Anthony Edwards the other day. Yeah. He pulls up and I think he broke the Minnesota Timberwolves 3-point record, Cats 3-point record for the Timberwolves. Yeah. Shooting a logo three. That's a bad shot. I don't care who you are. Unless you're Steph Curry or maybe Damian Lillard, that is a bad shot. Yeah. I don't at no point do I think that's good. The only time I like to see that shot is at the end of a shot clock when it's like you're being forced to, or it's at the end of the quarter and you're running it up and you just get past half court and you pop it. But at no point with multiple seconds on a shot clock should you be popping a logo three. It's just a bad three. Yeah. Now, the odd time, it's okay to see that kind of thing, but I think, it's just too many. I don't want to see a game where there's 60 3-pointers.
And that's what happened with Boston.
And not 60 between two teams. That's 60 with one team. Yeah. Like the Celtics, you said. Yep. Like, I know that they're average. I want to say they shoot at least 40 or 50 threes a game.
Yeah, no, it's definitely
like
high.
That, like, it's just not, it's not good basketball to watch. There's obviously, and I think you have to play to kind of what the style of players are. So there's just not really any good post-up players outside of, Jokic and Embiid when he decides that he's healthy enough to play.
Yeah. And going into that, I think the other thing I'm seeing is, you just talked about it, healthy enough to play. Load management. They just said, correct me if I'm wrong, Embiid's not playing in back-to-backs anymore. I'm pretty sure I heard that.
That's what he said. He said that himself, and it's like, man, like there's another one. Yeah. Like I don't have the numbers in front of me and stuff like that, but I mean, with the amount that he's getting played, and you said you don't want to play in back-to-backs?
Yeah.
Give me a break. You play basketball for a living. You know how much I would give to make $50 million for a season to play?
I'd play for free, hell. Just pay my travel and my room and board.
Shit, give me $200,000. I'll sit at the end of the bench. Yeah. I don't care. I'll clean their jock straps, for Christ's sakes. I don't care. Yeah. But, I mean, load management, I don't have a problem with the star players sitting out the odd game.
Yep.
And when it's a meaningless game and it's a home game, right? And they've given
advance notice.
And they've given advance notice that this is the plan, right? But when you show up to a game as a fan that you paid good money for, especially with the prices that they charge nowadays. Now, this wasn't a thing of load management. This was just, players getting traded. But I told you, so I'll tell our audience and stuff. I'd gone to a Heat game a couple of years ago against the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
And it was either the day after I bought my tickets or a few days after I had bought my tickets, and then Kyrie Irving demanded a trade.
Yeah.
Within a couple days, which then the Brooklyn Nets very quickly found a suitor in Dallas and shipped them off. And Kevin Durant, a few days later, he said he wanted out, and they got rid of him.
Yeah.
Did I get a refund on my tickets? No. I played Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving prices to see the Brooklyn Nets.
With Cam Johnson?
Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, and that is nothing against those two players.
They're talented, but they're not all-stars or superstars.
Mikal Bridges, I won a great bet on Christmas when he had that, was it almost 40 or 40 points, whatever he scored and stuff. Like, I got him to score. He had 27, and I needed him to get over 29 and a half or something like that with 3 minutes left in the third quarter, and he surpassed that 2 minutes after I took the bet, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, very good player. But I'm not spending my, and I'm a basketball,
savant,
savant, purist, whatever you want to call it and stuff. I love basketball. I love watching role players excel. Like I was listening to NBA radio and they're talking about Amen Thompson on the Rockets and all that stuff, who's a role player, and they spent 45 minutes talking about him.
Yeah.
And only basketball nerds like us could do that kind of thing. But like, I'm not paying to see Mikal Bridges play. I'm not paying to see Cam Johnson play. I'm paying to see Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. So, I think with this, when people are spending their hard-earned money to go to these games and then these stars aren't playing, I mean, you look at it, I mean, I don't know about the last game you went to, but I mean, those tickets, I was sitting basically at the top row of the lower bowl, and I think for the 3 tickets that I purchased, like, it was almost $2,000.
Yeah, it's not cheap. I mean, I went to see the Raptors play the Bucks, and I sat in the lower bowl, and they were $345 each. And then I could have gotten them for $151 because, their season was kind of off to a slower start. And I don't know if you heard the story about a kid and his dad from Alberta that drove all the way to watch Steph. And he didn't play. Last minute, same thing. I can't remember if it was an injury or load management. But he caught wind of it. So did the Warriors. And they gave him, tickets to the next home game 2 days later because they had a home game. But for guys like you and I who are flying out to Toronto or going to the States, you don't always have that cushion. So you got to, look at hotels, look at airfares, look at a matchup that you like, and spend some serious money. And sometimes you're going to be let down for not a legit reason.
Well, and the problem is a lot of times if you want to get good seats, you have to buy them
in advance.
A fair amount of time in advance. And I've wanted for a couple of years and stuff, and I know I've talked a little bit of smack about LeBron James already on this episode, which to our viewers that will listen to us in the future, you're going to hear a lot of that. I'm not a LeBron hater from the perspective of his game and all that stuff. I think his game is phenomenal. I think he's the second best player of all time, despite his fans. I know his fans are not going to be too happy with me about that, but I don't give a damn. I've wanted to go see him play in Toronto for a while, but what has stopped me from purchasing tickets is you never know when him or any of these other stars are going to play. I don't want to be purchasing tickets 2-3 months in advance because, and especially with a guy like him who can get hurt at any notice because he's 40 and stuff like that. He's not the bionic man that he used to be, and he would go, years without, getting hurt and stuff like that. It's just too big of a risk to spend LeBron James money on a ticket and then not get to see him play.
Yep.
I know, like, with, my guy D. Wade, I went to a lot of Heat games. I've gone to a few Heat games in Toronto, and, I've seen them play in Denver. Wade wasn't on the team that year, but I went and saw him in Portland.
Chicago.
I've seen him play a bunch of times, and every single time I went there, I was just praying that he didn't get hurt. And he had actual legitimate injury issues, and that plagued his entire career. But he so we hit, like, guys like that, the load management is a little bit more understandable and stuff like that. But like, I remember in the 2014 season, they basically said from the beginning of the season, we are not going to play him in the second game of back-to-backs or in one of the set of back-to-backs, depending on the importance of the game. But everybody knew that going in. So I knew on particular nights, I'm not going to be watching my guy on TV tonight. So, if it wasn't a game I particularly cared about, I usually watched anyways, but it was like, okay, I know he's not playing, so,
I'll live with it.
I can live with it, right? But, a guy like Embiid who's not, you never know what the issue is with him.
Well, and going into that, right, we just talked about it when we started. You said he told people that he's not playing on back-to-backs. I think when we look at the ratings and things kind of being on the decline, that's another problem. It's this player empowerment, right? I mean, a couple weeks ago, LeBron was on post-game interview, and he's saying, we have to play damn near perfect basketball because of the way the roster is constructed. Well, the roster is constructed that way because of the, demands of his salary, and he wants AD, and he wants this, and they drafted Bronny, and he's the, pulling all the strings, and then he's saying that, we don't have a, margin of error because our team's constructed this way. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, but I think, players are calling all of the shots, if not too many of the shots.
Well, look at the conversation we just had about Jimmy.
Yep,
where player empowerment has gone too far, and now like I had said, the Players Association is stepping in and filing a grievance with the Heat for suspending him and taking money from him. When Jimmy's the one acting up and acting like an idiot.
Yeah.
You know, and he's not the only one that did this. Kyrie Irving did this. And to Kyrie's credit, since he got to Dallas, there hasn't been not one issue. Kyrie's been great.
Ben Simmons is another guy.
Ben Simmons, we don't know what the hell happened with him. If he was actually hurt or if he was just being a crybaby, like, who knows? And honestly, like, Ben Simmons, his career's pretty much over anyways. He's irrelevant and stuff. But Kevin Durant did a little bit. James Harden has done it multiple times. Yeah. Anthony Davis did it. I know. There's a few other guys that I'm probably not thinking of off the top of my head, but this is where player empowerment has gone too far.
Kawhi could kind of be on the fence. I know with his injury and everything, but I don't know. Maybe with the Spurs, if he, that's kind of what funneled him out. I'm not going to complain because I got my Raptors a championship. But
you can't really complain about that. But yeah, there was a lot of, like, I remember with Kawhi with the Spurs. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of, like, what the hell is going on here? Because he's so quiet. He doesn't talk, right? And the Spurs are the same way, which I think is the best way to handle it. And you just kind of,
deal with it behind closed doors.
Yeah, which, is how the Heat try to deal with it. And, Jimmy is just not allowing that to happen. And Pat Riley did make the mistake of, like I said earlier, coming out and telling him to shut the hell up and, all that. But, I mean, it's just gone too far. I mean, guys are getting paid more than, ever before. And I mean, the new generation and the fan, this younger fan generation and stuff like that, they're always complaining about, the old heads, they're just complaining and blah blah blah, and they don't appreciate what they're watching and da da da. No, it's not that. It's the fact that a lot of these guys, when they signed a contract, they played.
And they played hard, way different conditions. And look at all the sports medicine and the science and the technology they have. Look at the shoes they have. Look at the travel, the hotels. These guys were playing 3 nights in a row, Blaine, and they're talking about back-to-backs. I don't think there was ever a stat when we were growing up and even before that talked about who has the hardest schedule, and all this. I mean, numbers and data and all that's good, but they're making too many excuses now. Like they're getting paid an astronomical amount. They have all these things that help them. And they still want to make it about them. So I get it. I get where the old heads are coming from. They would just suit up and play. And unless something really bad happened, I watched a take the other day where I think it was somebody, I can't remember if it was on the Pistons or the Celtics. He wore a helmet when he played because he had a concussion.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
And another guy had a neck brace on because they were worried they weren't going to get contract extensions.
Was that Gerald Henderson?
Yeah, it was somebody. Like, it was nuts.
I've seen the one with the neck brace. And I've seen I saw those pictures too. I just can't remember off the top of my head who that was and stuff like that. But, I mean, those guys would be basically laughing at what happens and stuff like that. And, the whole player empowerment and stuff. I mean, it's led to, and we'll get into this on another episode about the new, the new format of the All-Star game and stuff. But I mean, the All-Star game is case in point where, like, it's unwatchable. It is. And like I said, we'll get into this.
We've watched it together for
every year. And the last, and I don't think we did the last 2 years because it's a waste of time.
We watched it together last year, but like we were eating and talking and like we weren't as focused. I was not entertained.
No, and I mean, no one's ever expected there to be, Game 7 of the finals defense in an All-Star game. But at least when we were kids, even in the first 3 quarters, you knew the defense would pick up in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
It always did, kind of thing. But they would at least make an attempt to stop the first move.
Yeah.
And if they got by them, then okay. And you maybe the odd time someone would slide over and
help out.
At least put a body there, right? So they had to make another move. These guys literally just stand there and they don't even play defense. They're basically traffic cones taking turns shooting threes. Yeah. Like it's just terrible. And then that's trickled into regular season games where there's some regular season games that aren't as competitive as the All-Star games that we watched when we were kids.
Yeah.
And stuff, which, for an All-Star game, that's fine and stuff like that. But now it's gotten to the point where the All-Star game is so bad and stuff. And it all goes back to player empowerment where they think they're entitled to all this money and that they don't have to put on any effort, and we're supposed to just respect them, and, if you criticize them in any way, they throw a hissy fit.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, it really is just not, it really is just not good, and I mean, you have to, they had to bring in this NBA Cup.
Yeah.
To try to
make the regular season
more
or
meaningful.
The early part of the season more competitive.
You're playing basketball. Like do you not have competitive nature and stuff? Like I can't play basketball anymore. Like it's just I'm just getting too old to do it. I'll play the odd pickup game once in a while or go shoot around and stuff, but like I don't play, competitive basketball anymore. I play golf now because I still have, my competitive spirit and stuff like that. Yeah. But like these guys, like I feel like I'm more competitive playing golf with some of my buddies, and I'm not a very good golfer. I'm a 14 handicap. Mm-hmm. But, I feel like I'm more competitive playing golf with my buddies than some of these regular season games are. And it's disgraceful. And really, I mean, the NBA Cup, I mean, I think we talked about this when it was first announced. Yeah. And stuff. And I think we were on the phone, and I think I went on a 25-minute rant about how much I hated it and stuff. And
I don't know what I hate more, the courts or the actual thing.
Oh my God! Don't even get me started on the courts. I mean, for two guys,
it's distracting to watch. Like it hurts my eyes.
I know, and I actually have I've got really sensitive eyes. Like I just can't sit there and watch it. Like when they've got an all red court, yeah, I can't do it. Or an all blue court. The only ones that I could actually stand were the ones that were gray, yeah, and stuff like that. But like. And the other thing, and this is a little bit irrelevant and stuff, but they can put the NBA Cup trophy on the court, but they can't put the trophy on the court for the NBA Finals anymore, like they used to. Yeah. Everybody got excited for those courts. Those courts were awesome. Yeah. They don't even put the NBA playoffs thing on the court. Now it's all these digital ads and all this stuff. I mean,
jersey patches of how many championships they've won and
my God, it's just terrible. But this NBA Cup is it's just disgraceful. I think it's stupid. The play-in tournament, initially I wasn't too keen on that when they first announced it, but
it's made for some exciting basketball. It kind of gets a little competitive. I know we talked about that like one and done thing, but do we like it? Do we not like it? What are your thoughts?
Well, I like the concept of one and done. Like I'm a big college basketball fan. I probably watch more college basketball nowadays than NBA, and I still watch a ton of NBA and stuff. But like I've always loved the March Madness tournament. Yep. I always fill up my bracket and all that stuff. And I'm a big NFL fan too, so I was watching the NFL playoffs all weekend and stuff. And I love a one and done game. Yeah, because you're going to get that intensity. That's like when you get a game 7 in the finals. That's always the most competitive game.
Yep. It's win or go home, survive.
And same thing. I mean, pretty much with any playoff series, but I mean the finals, it's obviously amplified and stuff like that. But I mean, when you get into this thing where you fought all year to try and squeeze into the playoffs and stuff, and now it's down to 1, maybe 2 games and stuff. Well, for this, for 7 and 8 kind of thing, like the 7-8 game, and then there's the 9-10 game. The 9-10 game. Those guys have to go through 2 games. Yeah. The 7-8, the winner of that one
goes and the loser plays again. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't need to get into the how the actual format wins, but it's basically 1 or 2 games to decide
a playoff berth.
Yeah, your season, and I think it actually has added to the league, and I think there's a little bit of evolution that I think we all need to embrace.
I think we're gonna wrap up episode 1. I know we talked about quite a bit of things, but. To our audience and our viewers, stay tuned. We're probably going to be dropping another episode within the next week or 2, and going to chat a little bit about the Raptors, the MVP race, and kind of where we think that's at. The Netflix docuseries coming out about the Olympics, which is going to be really interesting, and the NCAA is actually going to pay players for the March Madness tournament. So we'll look at that and just kind of how that's going to work. So
and don't forget about the All-Star game where
the All-Star game.
We're gonna touch on this new. I mean, we talked about it a little bit with the the lack of effort in it and stuff like that. But this new format, this new format, whatever the hell you want to call it, we will touch on that as well. So thank you very much for tuning in to our first episode. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.
Take care, folks.
Peace.